Hello, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 5 of the Midwest Gaming Classic Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Garris, panel director of the Midwest Gaming Classic. The Nintendo PlayStation was found, and its first appearance in the United States was at the 2016 Midwest Gaming Classic. Retronauts co-host Jeremy Parish interviews Nintendo PlayStation owners Dan and Terry Diebold to discuss the discovery of the system and their journey up to that point. And you know what? Enough of me talking. Why don't we get to the podcast?
About 2 weeks before the Midwest Gaming Classic, I got an email that said, hey, we have the Nintendo PlayStation prototype. Would you like to have it at the Midwest Gaming Classic? And of course, my answer was absolutely. I had figured that the Nintendo PlayStation prototype was going to be something that, now that it was discovered, would very quickly find its way to an auction site and then be found and squirreled away into someone's basement for all time, never to be seen again. Luckily, the Nintendo PlayStation prototype ended up in the hands of Terry Diebold, who feels that the history of it should be shared and who is happy to come to whatever shows that he can. We were honored to be the first U.S. location that Terry brought the game console with. He also brought his son, Dan, who was the one who figured out what the game console was. We teamed him up with Jeremy Parish of Retronauts to have him lead the panel on the discovery and the history of the find of this console. And what you're going to see next is that panel.
The fact that they've got a Nintendo PlayStation is a curiosity, because obviously those are two great tastes that never quite got to taste good together. And so the whole story behind that is a pretty long and involved one. I don't know if you guys want to kind of give the kind of the nickel tour, just to kind of bring everyone into the loop. But
you might as well
I'm sure there are some people here who don't know the story.
Back in '91, in those days, Sony, Olaf Olsson was the CEO back then. Him and Ken Kutaragi, back in the day, decided to get together and create this monster. Pretty neat. Apparently, Nintendo wasn't happy with what was going on with Sony, so they did a side deal with Philips. And at that point, when Sony found that out, it kind of parted ways. In the interim, they made 200 of these prototypes, which is actually a prototype, but it's actually the unit they were going to start to produce to sell. So this is a prototype, but this is going to be sold to everybody out on the street. We've actually met some people in the past here, and we're actually going to be talking to some other people at Sony still now that worked on this project within the next couple months to give us more information. But after Olaf Olsson left Sony, he went to the company I worked for, Vanna Corporation. He was a board member. He had an office up in New York. And at that point, when they closed his office up in New York, they packed everything up and sent everything to our Horsham office, our warehouse in Pennsylvania. And we couldn't understand why, because this is the first time a board member ever sent his personal stuff to a warehouse. And when it came in, I remember that day, me and my director, we were the only two in the warehouse. The pallet loads showed up, they were plastic wrap, we ain't moving storage. And we were both like confused why we got it. But he said, put it in the top tier, keep it out of everybody's way. And that's what I did, jump on the forklift and did that. So after time goes by, what you do is you purge your warehouse every now and then, because you can't keep throwing stuff in it. We took the stuff down, HR came in, looked through the stuff, make sure nothing was pertinent, towards the company or anything that could get out on the streets. And we either trashed a lot of stuff or sent it back to Olaf. Apparently somebody in the interim, we had like 4 or 5 other maintenance guys, decided to move one of the pallet loads out of the way, away from the other stuff I was told to put there, and I wasn't there. And thanks to them, when we went bankrupt, what they do is they go around to the buildings, you snap pictures and you itemize things and you create lists for stuff to sell. Well, I was out sick, and I had gone through some of the buildings with the guys who were getting stuff together to sell online, And my VP had sent me to the conference rooms, the executive conference rooms, to pack up all the dishes and stuff, like items like that. You would have real nice fine china in your house. Well, there was 2 offices, one in Delaware and one in Springhouse. So I went and packed all the stuff up. I marked all the boxes. This is stuff I wanted to buy. When I saw it, some of it was brand new, some was used, but when you looked at it, it was still brand new to me. So my boss told me to keep X amount, because we weren't closed yet, just in case they had more board meetings, and just box the rest up for sale. So I did. So when it came the day in the auditorium when they had the online auction, if you wanted to be in on the online auction, you had to get a paddle to do it. So there was a few things online that I wanted to buy. And the dishes was one of them. There was a picture of 3 boxes with dishes and plates and everything in it. And the bid started like $25, went to $50, went to $60, went to $75. And I won the bid at $75. People probably thought I was nuts buying 3 boxes of dishes for $75. I'm like, well, you know, I guess they didn't read under the line. There's probably about 8 or 9 more boxes, DocuSafe boxes full of dishes and some brown boxes. So after I won the bid, I went to pay the auctioneer, and I gave him the money, and he took me my lot number, and they showed me all these boxes. I'm like, scratching my head, because I knew the guys. I was going around the building with them. I'm like, this can't be mine. He goes, yeah, all these boxes are yours. So I said, okay. So I saw the handwriting on some of the boxes that were mine, but the rest of them I didn't know what was in them. It took me 2 carloads to get all this stuff home. When I got home with the boxes, the ones I knew I packed, I set them aside. And then the brown moving boxes, the Wayne moving storage boxes that I didn't pack, I started going through them. One of the boxes I actually had shoes and ties in them. They were all offs. Another one had over 200 music CDs in it, which a lot of them were brand new, never unwrapped, which I thought that was pretty cool to begin with. And then when I opened the box up and saw this in there, I was like, wow, this is really neat. But I only saw PlayStation on it. It didn't dawn on me, when you look at it, the controller says PlayStation, but on the back it says Nintendo, and it just didn't click in my head. And the same with the cart. There's nothing written about PlayStation on it, but it says Nintendo on the back of it. So I tried to find information out online. You can't. The only thing you can find is concept art. You won't ever find a picture of this. Well, I couldn't anyhow. He'll tell you. So time had gone by, and Dan, who I'll let him take over the story from here because he's an analog boy and read it, and he heard some good stories.
So yeah, he brought this thing home. We both looked at it. This was probably, I don't know, how long ago? 9 years? It was like 9 years ago, something like that. I was young, still in high school. So I didn't really know, we didn't know anything about this thing. I know when he brought it home that it was special. So we tried looking online, we couldn't really find much. We found like 1 paragraph just talking about the project and how it failed. And then one day, like a year ago probably, I was on Reddit on Today I Learned, and I saw a Today I Learned post about this thing. So I went on there and I posted on there and I said, oh yeah, my dad has one of these in his attic. And of course nobody believed me. They're like, oh, does he have Half-Life 3 too? And I'm like, yeah, okay, shut up.
You got beat up pretty bad.
Yeah. So, you know, of course all these people are like, oh, get some pictures, you know, whatever. So I called him. I'm in Denver. He's in Philadelphia. I called him and I was like, hey Dad, you know that Nintendo PlayStation in the attic? He was like, yeah. I was like, go grab it. And he's like, why? I'm like, just go grab it. So he went upstairs. He grabbed it. He had a really bad camera phone at the time, and he took some really, really bad pictures. So instead of posting them on Reddit, I just told him, I can't use these pictures. People are going to call me a fraud. So yeah, a couple months went by. I just told him I would get some more pictures when I came to visit. I went to Philadelphia for 4th of July. While I was there, my dad reminded me, he's like, hey, I got that thing out of the attic if you want to take those pictures. I'm like, oh, yes, let's do it. So I took some pictures, I posted them on Reddit, and then my phone died, and the rest of that night, you know, I was just off the grid. I woke up at my friend's house, got a ride back to my mother's house, I plugged my phone in. Right when my phone turned on, it just started going crazy. It was insane, overwhelming. Yeah, and right when the phone turned on, it started ringing. People were calling me. I picked up the phone. Brian from Polygon somehow got my number off of LinkedIn. it's kind of creepy, but it's whatever. And the rest is history from here. We got invited to Hong Kong. We displayed it at Retro HK, which was a retro expo that we were helping organize. It was really good. Not quite as big as this, but hopefully one day it'll get there. Yeah, and here we are now.
All right, so that's the story of how that got here, but
Yes.
I think maybe it would be worth kind of just reiterating what exactly the Nintendo PlayStation was, because everyone's heard of a PlayStation, and everyone knows Nintendo, but this was kind of a very unique, very much a piece of it, like a product of its time. It was very early 90s when everyone was kind of jumping on a common bandwagon, and clearly Nintendo had ambitions with that too that never quite came to fruition. But if you guys, I don't know, you'd be interested in just kind of sharing exactly what this thing was and how it works.
Sure. It is a Super Famicom with a disk drive. Nothing too special. Well, I guess not, but right now it just plays Super Famicom cartridges and Super Nintendo games. I guess the idea was to take the Super Famicom and add, disk-based support for it, so they could play disc games. We actually met somebody when we were in Hong Kong, and he said that he played a Mario game on this thing back in the day in Tokyo when they were working on the project. But we don't have any discs for the system.
So it might be worth mentioning that for anyone not familiar, the Super Famicom is the same thing as the Super Nintendo Entertainment System that was released here. You said this was developed in 1991, right? So this was This was actually being developed when the Super NES was released in America. Nintendo was starting to look ahead to the CD-ROM movement. Sega released the Sega CD. NEC had the TurboGrafx CD. This was going to be Nintendo's answer to that, but for various reasons, internal debates and whatever, that dropped out, and Nintendo instead offered some really poor support for Philips CDI system and just stuck with cartridges. But yeah, looking at this thing, it's really interesting because it looks like the front panel underneath has that kind of yellowing that.
Yeah, that's
Nintendo
another reason why
have.
people were claiming that it was a fake, because they're saying it's yellow in there but nowhere else. My guess is that it's made out of different kind of plastic.
They added bromine.
Yeah, bromine.
Plastic back in the day. That's what causes it to yellow. So this might have been too hard. They may have created this somewhere else in the factory out of a different batch. That's all.
Yeah, this part right here is actually just one piece. It's not connected up here. When I completely disassembled it, this is just a separate piece.
Yeah, we don't want to clean it off either. Then people be like, "Oh, look, they did it in a 3D printer." Nah, not true. This is the real deal.
There are a lot of similarities, though. The eject and reset buttons on top are nearly identical to the PlayStation 1 size and placement-wise.
One thing they did patent on is, though, when you turn the power button on, you can't pull the cartridge out. You have to turn the power off.
It's a really sophisticated eject button.
Yeah, when you pull this thing apart and look at the guts on the inside, you'd be amazed at all the stuff they did to it back in the day. The engineers back then really had a lot going on. But we got people working on the CD end of it, hopefully, for us to help us get this whole unit up and running. I'd love just to see it run once. That's all I care.
Some of you might be aware, but the ROM file for the cartridge is available online.
Yeah.
Some people, I forget the guy's name, he created the Super Nintendo emulator. I forget which one exactly, but he was messing around with the BIOS and got the CD-ROM to technically work in an emulator. But CD-ROM is not working in person. We think it's not getting power. If you look in the inside at the board, there's a couple botch wires on there. I don't know if maybe the reason why they let Olaf Olafsson originally keep this thing is because they disabled it, maybe. And they knew that, I'm pretty sure he wasn't the most technical guy. He couldn't really open it up and figure out how to fix it. But hopefully, we've been talking to some people. We really would like to get it completely working.
Yeah, there's just so many wires jumping from whatever in there. Hopefully there's one big brown wire in there. We're not sure why. The rest of them are white. And it's really a weird looking wire. We figured if that one disappeared, maybe a whole lot would happen. But we're not engineers, so
Yeah.
and we don't want to just start pulling wires and this thing go.
Yeah.
Then we wouldn't have anything. So
For sure.
leave it to the guys with the brains.
If you look at the back of it too, can also see that's really similar to the PlayStation 1. The only thing that is different is this next port on the back here. A lot of people think it is an HDMI port. That's another reason why people were claiming that it was fake. We actually have no idea what it is, but if you do look, it runs straight into like the sound aspect of the board.
Right. On the bottom, you can pop this out.
Yeah,
It's got a connection for something.
Yeah, just like the other Nintendos.
Yeah.
But yeah, this next port, it's a big mystery. But like I said, all the pins feed right into the sound portion of the board. If you look at the board, it's all labeled really well. You can tell that it's all done by hand, and it was very clean when I first opened it too. There was like no dust or anything in there. So yeah, me and my friend think that this next port may, because if you look on the front, you can see the controls for the audio CDs and stuff. We think maybe it's there so like when you're playing a game and like a cartridge and there's an audio CD in here, this feeds the audio from the CD out so it doesn't interfere with, like maybe it's like a home entertainment system. That's the only thing we can really figure out.
Yeah, one of the things I think with Nintendo going siren to deal and hooking up with Philips is because they really didn't see Nintendo anywhere on the front of this thing at all. It just says PlayStation or Sony. So that probably ticked them off. So, yeah, that would tick me off too. Especially when you come into the office, into a deal with somebody and you're offering up the sound chip and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you do look at the motherboard on this thing, it's pretty neat. First time we saw it, you actually see a sound chip that says Nintendo on it. And right
Sony
above it,
and
and right above it has a Sony one.
Yeah. And a lot of people too were claiming that back in the day where it says PlayStation on the controller, that's not how it would have been written. It would be two separate words.
So obviously the question of authenticity has been hovering over this the entire time. What steps have you guys taken to, beyond just showing it, to convince people and, to convince yourselves to confirm that, yes, this was a real thing? I mean, obviously, because you got it from Olaf Olafsson.
Right.
So you're familiar, with the whole provenance of
this
the
plaque has his name on it too. It came in the box with the unit. I got 3 other plaques, but they're from PlayStation. And his name's only on this one. I'm sorry, I'm not used to Mike. His name's only on this one.
But people online can say anything they want to. So obviously you've had to get it, kind of validated with third parties. What steps have you taken in that regard?
He actually got, a buddy of ours, Dixon Wu of Retro HK, actually had got a book. He found a book with the gentleman's name in it.
Yes, we found
And it
a
showed the
book
exact
called
picture.
Revolutionaries at Sony. That's the English title. We bought the Japanese version when we found one copy of it when we were over in Hong Kong. And it's a book, it's about Kutaragi, right? Yeah. It's a book all about, I can't read it because it's in Japanese, obviously, but in chapter 2, there is one picture of this exact unit sitting on the table. Same cartridge and everything. Yeah. And I think another thing that helped us really validate the authenticity is the ROM file on the cartridge. Like I said, there was a lot of people in the homebrew scene and stuff online that were messing around with it, and they're like some of the best in the world, and they say they believe it's 100% legitimate.
Yeah, when you turn the card on, it actually says Sony on it. 0.95.
Has a pretty cool boot screen.
Yeah, we acted like a bunch of kids in a candy store when we saw it turn on the first time. Our voices went so high. We're like, oh my God! I can't believe it.
Yeah, that was another thing too. People were like, well, if it's real, why don't you just turn it on and make a video? That was before we went to Hong Kong. Another reason why we didn't do that is because, one, we didn't want to be those guys that ruined something amazing. Like that guy, I saw something on some like YouTube channel or something. This guy dropped like a priceless artifact live TV, and I did not want to be that guy. Like he said, Dixon Wu, our friend who helped us get to Hong Kong and helped us organize the event, I really wanted it to be like a nice special moment, the first time we turned it on too. So
it was.
We're sorry for the delays and everything like that. We know after I posted the pictures and the original video online, people were just going crazy, wanting more. And yeah, I just didn't want to break it.
Yeah, he did a minute 24 video.
It was the worst video ever.
Yeah, but we still get haters nowadays. That still diss us, but they help fuel the fire. They get us to places like this, and as you all can see, you're looking at the real deal. They helped us even get over to Hong Kong. We were there for 53 days. HMV flew us over there, flew us back. Marriott of Sheraton gave us a suite for 53 days. And these people on the back here, my T-shirt, they were our sponsors over there. They gave us money for food and drinks while we were over there.
We were handing out these T-shirts at the Retro HK event. 300
of these were handed out over Retro HK. Actually, 200 coffee mugs too from the sponsors. So, they helped start this for us.
I definitely think that trip definitely helped.
Yes, and we want to do what we would actually like to do is just go anywhere. We're willing to go anywhere people want to see this thing. We just don't want to put it in the box, keep it in the attic. That's not what it's about. Too much history gets buried, and we don't want to bury history. We want to show.
We tried getting a Kickstarter funded. Some of you might have seen for a book. I think a lot of people. The reason why the campaign ended on April 4th, it was not successfully funded. I think the reason why is because people thought we were trying to write like a novel about our lives and finding this, but really we were just trying to make like a coffee table book, because obviously we can't like bring this thing everywhere. We would like to give you guys something where like you can keep in your collection. I feel like books are a really good way to preserve history. Fortunately, it was not funded, but we still do have all the content, so maybe we might release it online or something like that.
Yeah, we're still going to go forward with some form of book with this thing. I think another reason why the book didn't take off here is because a lot of people in the States didn't know about it. It was more so over in Hong Kong.
Yeah, people were saying it was too overpriced too. We were trying to get like $79 per book, but we were going to print it really, really nice, highest quality printing we could find. But
it's got high-res pictures. I mean, we got like 455 pictures of this thing taken up. He was taking
I
it apart.
disassembled it when we were in Hong Kong. We were step-by-step pictures of it.
And the guy that was taking the pictures posing, he did 455 pictures. I mean, he's a professional. We spent like 12 hours with this guy, and he took every angle of this thing with the lighting and everything else, and it turned out beautiful. We also went to a doctor's office and did x-rays, so we got high picture res.
It was quite funny. We walked in this doctor's office in Hong Kong. Yeah. A lot of them didn't speak English, and we walked in there.
And they all thought we were freaking nuts.
They're like, "You want to x-ray that thing?" It was crazy because, all right, I should start off with this. When we were first traveling to Hong Kong, we were leaving Denver. He flew into Denver to meet me, and then we flew to Los Angeles. When we first were leaving Denver, we went through security, and a lady comes up to us after we go through. She's like, "Is this yours?" Or we had a Pelican case with it in it. And we said, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay, come over here. We're going to have to take another look at this." So when we walked over,
I looked at him, I said, "We're screwed."
Yeah. I was like, "Man, we haven't even left the airport yet." We had trouble getting our tickets to. It was crazy. But when we walked over, it was a nice surprise. We saw the very first x-ray, the inside of this thing, and we were kind of like little kids in a candy shop. And this lady was like,
"Yeah, our eyes are so close to the screen, she thought we were nuts."
Yeah, I tried taking a picture of the x-ray when it first happened, but this guy like yelled at me. But it was good to see that, because like before we hadn't opened it, I was kind of like moving it around, trying to feel if anything was loose in there or anything, but it was good to know right before we left that there was actually stuff inside of it.
Not a brick.
Yeah, so have you guys gotten a call from Olaf Olafsson who's like, "Hey, thanks for designing that thing for me. I've been wondering where it was." In my experience, working in the games press, companies are very proprietary, very protective of prototype equipment, even things that are obviously obsolete, never going to be released to the market. Even things like debug kits, so you can play unreleased games, have stickers all over them saying, "This is property of Nintendo. Please return. Please call this number." Yeah. So have you gotten any feedback like that? Has there been any concern?
We actually had our friend Gemma, she runs a YouTube channel out of the UK. She tried contacting Olaf several times, but he never returned any of her messages. She tried calling PlayStation and Nintendo too, but I guess they just don't care.
And I don't think Olaf can either come and take it off me because I legally bought it in an auction, so it's mine, free and clear.
Yeah.
But his fault. Thank you, Olaf. I mean, just because you're a CEO, don't mean you should be keeping it. They're supposed to be called 200 and destroyed.
Closer eye on something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had friends say, oh, if that was mine, I'd been at home and safe CEO or not. I agree, but apparently there was a guy named Brian, I think, on Reddit, said he saw it up on Olaf's desk in New York. So I tried Google on that, Olaf Olaf's New York office, and it didn't show any pictures. So the validity of it. But like I said, we already know it's his.
Yeah, it was funny because when we first announced that we were going to go to Hong Kong, most people were saying like Sony or Nintendo is going to come and take it from you while you're there.
Oh, yeah. Have fun getting your shit ripped off while you're in Hong Kong.
It was funny. And then, I guess Nintendo was here today or yesterday too, and we didn't see any of them, so.
Yeah, I've shot some emails like to some of the Nintendo sites on Facebook, and they get in contact with me if they'd like to talk. Anything, none of them. I think it's a black eye. They don't want to talk about it, but hey, we're happy.
I think Nintendo might be a little embarrassed about the situation.
But they can reach out anytime they want to talk to us about it. We don't care.
Yeah.
We'll talk to anybody about it. Especially if any of you have friends out there that know anything about this, send them our way. Be glad to talk to them.
Yep.
Yeah, in my experience, when companies like Nintendo and Sony don't contact you about something, that means they know about it, but they're just letting it slide. So that's probably going to be the philosophy they take on this.
I'm sure when we were over in Hong Kong, they had spies walking around, taking pictures and stuff, getting back to Olaf or Shuhei Yoshida Yoshi.
Yeah, there were some people that were trying to there was another retro gaming event going on at the same time in Hong Kong, and they were mad because we had ours at the same time and nobody was going to theirs. So they came to try and sabotage our event. They put a bootleg version of Pokemon Green on one of the arcade cabinets, and this little kid was playing it, and then they took pictures of it and posted it online saying, oh, these guys are using piratey games and stuff like that. It was pretty funny.
So you mentioned that you talked to someone who had played some kind of Mario game on the CD system. Have you made any effort to find people who had worked on Super Famicom, PlayStation games? Because I remember Nintendo Power back in the day kind of promoted this and were like, hey, CDs are coming, and they talked about, I think, Seventh Guest. I know the game Secret of Mana, the Squaresoft action RPG, was originally a CD game.
Cut that game down because it's too large for a cartridge. That was the plan. If we would have gotten the Kickstarter successfully funded, we might have tried to go to because we have a couple people that have told us they can, get us in contact with people who worked on the project. We actually met somebody today who can get us in contact with somebody who worked on the project. It would be really, really cool to find out more about this thing because, we don't really know much about it, really.
Yeah, we're going to be getting in touch with that guy actually within the next few weeks.
Yeah, that guy that actually said he played the games on it back in the day. He works for Capcom.
And there you go. That's the end of this week's podcast panel. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, learning about the discovery of the Nintendo PlayStation. Something that was shown very briefly in a couple magazines back in the 1990s with Nintendo talking to Sega about merging for a console, in which we all know now in the future that didn't happen. Nintendo went on to make several other consoles, and Sony made the Sony PlayStation, which at this time is on PlayStation number 5. And that's it. That's the end of this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and until next time, take care, stay safe, and game on.